My name is Justin Horing. I'm the ELA curriculum coordinator for the district, and I have lots of district coaches in the room with me, and also our math coordinator. So if you have any questions throughout our meeting today, please just put it in the chat box so that we can address any challenges that you might have. If you haven't already, join the pair deck on the screen. Go to joinpd.com and then type in the code VNLSY, and that code will be displayed in the top right-hand corner throughout the presentation as well. After I'm done, I will post the video of the recording as well as the slides and any resources that might be helpful to you. Another thing, make sure that your microphone is muted so that there's no feedback or interference in the recording. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. The title of our presentation today is One Size Doesn't Fit All. And this is kind of bits and pieces of different presentations and PL that I facilitated with different groups of people, including instructional coaches, building leaders, interventionists, different buildings. And it's been really good to hear a lot of positive feedback, because it's all about how do we take what we have as the curriculum, the Tier 1 core curriculum, and use it to meet the needs of all students. And as teachers, we know that one size just doesn't fit all. So how do those two ideas go together? The driving question that I'd like you to consider throughout our time together is, how can we design learning experiences that address students' strengths, interests, and needs, and invite student voice and autonomy? Those are things that we all want for all of our students. But again, we have a core curriculum that's meant for all students. So again, how do we make those things work together so that we can serve our students to the best of our ability? Our outcome by the end of our time today, I will analyze examples of differentiation and scaffolding so that I can plan and implement instructional strategies that maximize the achievement of all students within the Tier 1 ELA curriculum. And then you'll be successful at the end of our time together when you can define and provide examples of differentiation and scaffolding for all learners through the lens of pedagogical practices embedded.
Yeah. Okay, now go.
Make sure your microphone is off, because we can hear somebody. I'm not sure who it is. So again, we're looking at how can we meet the needs of all students within a Tier 1 curriculum. And before we get into the differentiation and scaffolding piece, I wanted to bring in this visual from the Indiana Department of Education about the 3 tiers of instruction, because what we're referring to is that bottom layer.
Yeah, this is the same thing as last time.
If you could mute your microphone, that'd be great.
It's okay. Don't get your hands out.
The bottom layer is the Tier 1 instruction, which is where all students receive grade level instruction. That's what we've been working on the past 2 summers of developing with our curriculum writers, our teachers, our tuners, and really making sure that we have a solid foundation for all students. And I'm not going to go too much into the Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction, but just know that that is in addition to Tier 1 instruction. So again, all students receive that Tier 1 instruction, and it is designed to meet the needs of 80 to 90% of all students. If students need additional support, then we can move into different forms of intervention, and those increase in intensity and duration as we go from Tier 2 to Tier 3. But really, again, what we're looking at is that driving question on the right. How can we design learning experiences that address students' strengths, interests, and needs, and invite student voice and autonomy in Tier 1 instruction? It can be done, but we need to establish what does that look like within the guardrails of the curriculum. Take a minute now, if you have your pair deck slides on your screen, to click that image on the right-hand corner or the right-hand side of the screen. It'll open up in a Google Drive file, so you can see it on your screen bigger. And as you're doing that, I just want to mention the other piece on the screen is the RISE rubric. And it's important for us to know how to use scaffolding and differentiation in our instruction, because those are things that we are expected to know what they are and how to use them as teachers. So those are things that we're evaluated on. And we need to have a common understanding of what they are and how to apply them to our tier 1 instruction. So you should have that open now on your screen so that you can see it bigger. And I'm going to go through kind of what this is and how it works. This is in our FWCS literacy framework, as well as all of the other content frameworks. We all use the same visual to represent personalized academic support. And so it starts at the bottom, where we are differentiating based on student readiness, interest, and learning style. We have to start there because we can't personalize instruction if we don't know our students. We have to know where they are in relation to the standard that we're teaching and the concepts that they need to know, understand, and be able to demonstrate in the classroom. We also have to know their interests. What are they interested in? What do they care about? What sparks their curiosity? And their learning styles. How do they learn best? What is their preferred style of learning? Those are interesting, important factors in determining how to differentiate our instruction. Once we know our students, then we can differentiate in these 3 ways. There are other ways that we can differentiate as well, but these are the 3 primary ways that people discuss differentiation. So we can differentiate the process by determining how students arrive at their learning destination. And that could be something as simple as giving a student more time to dive into the content that they're learning. Maybe they need more support and they didn't have that background knowledge beforehand, so they need more time. Or it could work on the other side, where you have a high achieving student or a high ability student who is really interested in the content and wants to take more time to explore it. It works both ways, but you can differentiate the process to meet your students' needs. We can also differentiate by the product. What does the end destination look like for the student? So that's probably the easiest way to think about differentiation for most people, is what does that end product look like? And technology has really made that an easy way to differentiate, because you can make videos or podcasts or use Flipgrid. You can do a lot of different things to differentiate the end product. And then you can differentiate the content by using different resources for the students to arrive at their learning destination. And that could be things like varied content that they're reading. So it could be different nonfiction articles that are achieving the same purpose, focused on different content, or it could be something like lit circles where students are grouped by their choice in books. So those are 3 different ways to differentiate, and we're going to get more into specific ways to do that a little bit later. Once we've decided how to best differentiate for the needs of our students, then we can scaffold towards those grade level outcomes. Scaffolding is just any support that the teachers give the students as they're working towards those grade level outcomes. So any support bridging the gap between where the students are and where they need to be. It's really breaking down that process into smaller steps based on what the students need. And then here's maybe even the most important part of all of this, is that the outcome stays the same. We're not changing the outcome for the students when we're differentiating or scaffolding. The outcome is the same. We're just changing what it looks like for different students. So that's what the visual looks like. And I'll give you some time to look at that in just a minute as we go on. Here's another slide on your screen. You can keep the visual up on your computer if you want to. But on the screen are definitions of differentiation and scaffolding. Of course, I'm not going to read these to you, but it is a reference for you if you want to go back through the slides and look at the differences. I do want to highlight this point down here about the fact that, yes, they are different things, but they're also very similar. And the point is not to say I differentiated here and I scaffolded here. And it's not for principals to go into your rooms and say, oh, you didn't differentiate, but you did scaffold. It's really just about how can we meet the needs of our students in specific ways? How can we be precise in the way that we serve our students? So that's kind of what this part is all about. Now, I've done a lot of talking, a lot of explaining. I'd like for you to take some time now to look at the 2 images on the screen. And in Pear Deck, I'd like you to answer the question, how do these 2 images represent the differences between scaffolding and differentiation? I'll give you some time to do that, and then I'll share some of your responses. Okay, thank you so much for responding. I see a couple people more that are still typing, but I'm going to show a couple of responses, a lot of similar responses, which is good because I feel like we're on the same page. I wanted to highlight a couple. Hopefully, Pear Deck doesn't fail me. Okay, it's not showing. Okay, I'm just going to read them to you. So somebody said the bridge is the link between what a child can do and what support they need. So that's like scaffolding. And the map is the curriculum or how to get there. So it's interesting to see a curriculum as a way, possible ways for students to achieve a common goal. The map shows different ways to get the outcome. So that's differentiation. And the bridge represents the support that you need to get there. And I think it's important to know that with the bridge, and I think everybody for the most part said that the bridge is scaffolding and the map is differentiation. But there's more than one form of support that you could give somebody other than a bridge. You might give somebody a boat, or you might have somebody go all the way through the river and get messy. There are different ways. And the other thing about scaffolding is that it's temporary. So we don't always want to give a student that specific support if they don't need it anymore. So always keep that in mind as well, that it's temporary support. Okay, very good. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of examples, and what I'd like you to do on Pear Deck is choose whether you think that this example is an example of differentiation or scaffolding, and then we'll discuss. So the first one, the teacher allows learners to choose to listen to an audiobook or to read the physical book. So choose either scaffolding or differentiation on Pear Deck. All right, of course, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Pear Deck is not letting me see any of your responses. So we're just going to go through these together. This first one is actually differentiated process. So it's differentiation, and that's how students come to understand or make sense of the content. So that's the first example. The next one, the teacher gives students a simplified version of a lesson, assignment, or reading, and then gradually increases the complexity, difficulty, or sophistication over time. Is that differentiation or scaffolding? Okay, this is an example of scaffolding because we're bridging the gap between where students are and where they need to be. We'll go through these a little bit quicker, even though I'm not getting any of your responses. You can talk about it with the person next to you. Next one, the teacher gives students an exemplar or a model of an assignment they will be asked to complete. Is that differentiation or scaffolding? Okay, that is an example of scaffolding because again, we're bridging the gap between where students are and where they need to be. Okay, the next one, the teacher allows students to propose their own ideas for projects. Is that differentiation or scaffolding? Okay, this is an example of differentiated content. What resources are used to arrive at the learning destination? We'll do a couple more. Next one, the teacher uses think alouds to model his or her thought process as he or she reads a text, solves a problem, or designs a project. Is that differentiation or scaffolding? That's right, it's scaffolding. Again, we're bridging the gap between where students are and where they need to be. Okay, one more. The teacher describes or illustrates a concept, problem, or process in multiple ways to ensure understanding. Is this scaffolding or differentiation? This is the one that has tripped people up the most when we've talked about these things, and the correct answer is scaffolding. It's bridging the gap between where students are and where they need to be. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the differences between the two ideas and a little bit about how they work together. I'm going to show you, once Pear Deck responds, I'm going to show you a chart that shows more details about how we can put this all together and put it into action. And you can click on this to open it and make it bigger so that you can save a copy for yourself. I'm going to first of all explain to you what's on this chart. Then I'm going to show you how we can use it within the cycle of, or a collaborative inquiry cycle. And then I'm going to give you a specific example of how you could use it. So at the top, we have the readiness, interest, and learning profile. That's what we know about our students and some definitions to go along with those as well. This is where we always want to start. We don't just want to differentiate because we feel like it or because we like this way. We have to, first of all, consider where our students are, who they are, and what their needs are. And then we can go over to this first column, which is differentiating by content, process, or product. And then again, there are some definitions there. From there, then we can look in these boxes to find specific examples of how we can differentiate in those different ways to meet those specific needs. There's a lot of information there, and this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a sample. And this is from a book by Carol Ann Tomlinson, who's kind of the guru on differentiation. So that's what's in the chart. Now I'm going to go back to Pear Deck, and you'll have some time to play around with this in a little bit. But how does this work within a collaborative inquiry cycle, which is our teaching and learning cycle basically, and how we determine what to teach and what that process looks like. So again, we're starting here. I really wanted to emphasize that we're starting with the needs of our students, and that's phase one, which is assess where students are, considering the curriculum expectations and building on student readiness, interests, and learning profile to establish learning goals and success criteria. We have to start with our students. From there, phase 2 is designing the learning experiences. What do we want students to do better at? Or how can we serve them better based on their needs? And we need to design the learning around the students. Phase 3 is, of course, implementing that plan, monitoring the learning scaffolding as needed. So there's the scaffolding piece, and guiding students into deeper discoveries. Then the last part is sometimes the most powerful, where teachers collaborate to figure out what worked, what didn't work, and next steps. Let me show you a specific example of how we can use this process to serve our students. Phase 1, the assess part, there's a small group of students who lack the background knowledge or the readiness needed to access the grade level text about the Constitution. So I've chosen to focus on the readiness because that's where my students are struggling. From there, I'm designing the learning around their needs. So while other students are independently writing or reading, I'm going to facilitate a series of small group vocabulary lessons on key terms related to the Constitution. I will also highlight these terms in the grade level text. So I'm focusing on the differentiating by content, and I've chosen to use targeted small group instruction. I'm going to front load vocabulary and also highlight text. So I'm choosing multiple strategies because I believe that's what's best for my students. And I just want to highlight that I was talking about this with some middle school teachers yesterday, and they really had some questions about this top one, materials at varied readability levels. And they said, I thought we couldn't do that anymore. I thought we couldn't vary the levels of text for our students. And I said, that is a tool in our toolbox, but it certainly is not the only one. And it should not be the first one that we go to. And it shouldn't be the only one that we go to. So it is something that we can do if it's the best, most appropriate differentiation for that student. But it's very easy to do, but it's definitely not our only option. And most times it's not our best option because we want students to be exposed to grade level text so that they have exposure to grade level vocabulary, sentence structures, and ideas. That is very important. So this is an option, but it's not the only option. Okay, so once I implement this plan, phase 3, as students demonstrate mastery through a vocabulary assessment that I put together, they are removed from the small group. So they're not going to be with me for the rest of the year because I know that they struggled with this one text and this one set of vocabulary that they needed. They received the support they needed, and then they moved on because I knew that they were capable of accessing that grade level text. From there, I met with my co-teachers or my partner teachers and asked questions like, is additional support or instruction needed? And has the instruction led to comprehension of grade level texts? From there, we repeat the cycle again and continue to support students. So again, that's a lot of information. I'd like to give you some time to process. Take some time now to reflect on the chart and think through phases 1 and 2 of the collaborative inquiry cycle, which is really assessing where students are and designing learning experiences. How can you use this information in an upcoming lesson? You can type in Pear Deck, and it looks like they are now responding for me, so I can see it on Pear Deck, and I'll share a couple with the whole group.
And Lisa heard that list. I use some of this stuff with my instructional assistant and with my Snyder tutor because I allow them to, after I've introduced the lesson, to almost back up and say, hey, Adriana, will you take, hello, Jaden, and, get some, grab some whatever manipulatives. And would you show him what we're talking about? Because I can see he's not seeing it. So I guess maybe I don't front load as much as I reload. I guess would be almost what I would call what I do. It seems to work. My math scores are pretty darn good. So
If you're gonna do that, I would.
we're using multiplication right now to convert like feet to yards or whatever, whatever the conversion is, conversions. And I'm always harping on about multiplication facts. And Lorelai said yesterday, Miss Glass, you did tell us we were going to always use multiplication facts. Here we are again. I said, I told you. I mean, the fourth grade curriculum, there's like two things that aren't. Every other Stanford is based on the
Please make
multiplication.
sure that your microphone is muted. We can hear your conversation. Thank you.
So
Okay, thank you for your response. If you're still typing, you can continue to type. I want to highlight a couple of the responses. It's not going to let me show them on your screen, so I'm just going to read them to you. Somebody said we can utilize our data from a recent assessment in order to determine needs, then plan small group instruction to meet those differentiated needs. Somebody said, be clear on my destination or the standard and recognize that you will need to understand where each student is currently and at what they will need in order to reach the destination. Somebody else said, we can use scaffolding to guide collaborative cycles. Students can use the Fab4 to run and assist one another in their thinking. The teachers can then assist students by modeling and pushing students further in questioning. And then somebody else said, this would be, and there were a couple like this, it would be extremely helpful if it was put into the actual curriculum with the lessons. And I do agree with that to an extent, because we can only differentiate and scaffold so much within a tier 1 curriculum, but we don't know the students that are going to be in front of you. And so it's a challenge knowing that we have this tier 1 curriculum, but also knowing that we have to meet the needs of the students in front of us. So one thing that we're going to do this summer is spend more time making sure that those scaffolds are in place, specifically for groups like special education students and ELL students and high ability students. That is definitely a focus. But we also want to really think through how can we provide students more choice in the curriculum, flexible choice that's purposeful and precise, but also how can we provide teachers with more flexibility as well, that's also precise and purposeful. So those are things that we're working through, and as we continue to write and revise curriculum, I think it's getting better and better and stronger. So please know that we are working on those things, and we are very optimistic about how we can apply these ideas of scaffolding and differentiation to our tier 1 curriculum for all teachers and all students. Thank you again for those responses. There are so many good ones that I might address in another way, another time. We have a couple minutes left, so I want to highlight, I'm just going to breeze through a couple things that you will have as a reference, and then I want to get to our digital parking lot. And it's going to go even slower because Pear Deck is so slow right now. So this slide is just a visual of that collaborative inquiry cycle that I think many of you are familiar with, definitions of each of those phases. So you can see that visually. And then the next slide, again, I'm just going to breeze through these since we're short on time. The next one kind of shows how it goes together with the teaching and learning cycle that I think everybody is familiar with, because we've been focusing on that for a couple of years now. Just showing how they go together. And basically steps 1 and 2 of the teaching and learning cycle fall into the assess category, and step 3 goes into phase 2, step 4 goes into phase 3, and step 5 goes into phase 4. So they're very connected. There are many different models that we can use to navigate change and talking about teaching and learning. This is just a different version. They all achieve the same goal, but I just wanted you to see how similar they are, even though you can't see it on your screen. Oh, there it goes. So that's the slide. You can go back to that and review that if you'd like to at another time. I have one more slide that, again, I'm just going to breeze through that I think we'll dive more deeply into next time. And that's the fusion of pedagogical and innovative practices, where we're looking at those proven pedagogical practices that we've been focusing on a lot the past 2 years as we've been developing curriculum, but also looking forward to how can we incorporate more flexibility, more choice, more technology that's purposeful and meaningful into the curriculum. There's also a link to the learning design rubric that we will be using this summer and into next year if you'd like to click that and look at that as well. The last thing that I have for you is a digital parking lot. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, this would be a great place to put it, and I'll follow up with you. And also a question, how will you use this information moving forward? So thank you so much for your time today and for your attention. I hope you have a great day, and I will post this presentation on the LMS as soon as I have a recording. Thank you.